Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to us by our Amazon affiliate link.
It's super simple how it works. Just click on the link in our show notes or head on over to whichsidepodcast.com and click on the Amazon link on our website. Anything you buy, we get a small percentage of it back.
Yeah, basically, we get a little bit, they get a little less.
Yeah, so, if you're already planning on using Amazon, please consider using our link to do it. It helps us out a lot. That's it.
Joseph Buddenberg is on house arrest right now and has a wish list on Amazon. So you should go to Amazon and hook up Joseph. He could really use your support right now.
And it will help out the show at the same time.
Totally.
whichsidepodcast.com. This is episode 148.
This week we have Kyle Hadfield of Reddit fame.
Yeah, we talk about what they're calling the immigration crisis going on right now, as well as what he calls Post Nationalism and his activism work that he's trying to get going. So stick around for that. Hey Jordan, what news and events do we have going on this week?
There isn't really anything that anyone's told me about, so tell me about things and we can shout them out on the show.
I mean, I know there's stuff going on, so let us know, and we'll let everyone else know.
This week's listener shout-out comes from Charlotte Malrich. Charlotte wanted to shout out the No New Animal Labs tour. They'll be in D.C. Tuesday and Wednesday, and their next stop is in New York.
We'll have a link to the tour in the show notes, so check it out. It's pretty amazing the stuff that they're doing.
I'm going to slingshot this over to Jeremy now. Wow.
I'm going a little lighthearted on this one this week. But on September 8th, 1966, that's when Star Trek started.
That's in there?
That's in there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. If you like these little tidbits of history, you can get them out of a Slingshot personal organizer. You can get one at a local info shop, or if you don't have a local info shop, an online info shop like AK Press.
Star Wars is better.
But there's a lot more content with Star Trek.
And it's a lot cooler as far
and
as
Star Trek really
diversity.
Pushed diversity a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, they had the first interracial kiss and a whole bunch of other things. But they didn't have the intersex bathrooms like Battlestar.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Mm.
Mari won't watch that with me. I told her she needs to.
It's good. It's good, Mari. I sincerely hope you enjoy this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
So how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. It's 8:30 in the morning here, so a little bit early.
Oh, crazy. Where are you at right now?
Actually, I'm living in China.
Okay.
What brought you to China?
Well, that's pretty easy. Studied political science in college and had no effing or fucking, as we can say on this podcast, idea what to do afterwards. So I went to teach English in China, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, so how long have you been doing that in China?
I've been here for 10 years already.
Holy shit, that's a long time.
Yeah, actually, I just did the math the other day when I was like applying for a job, and I was like, whoa, I was saying like 8 years, but then I checked, and it's been 10 years. Yeah.
Wow. So, do you love it? Do you have any plans of leaving, or do you just like say this is my new life?
No, it's my new life. I just got married recently to a local Chinese, and she's pregnant, so I'll probably be here for quite a while.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I heard one of your hosts had a daughter as well.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have a daughter. She's a little shit.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have the same feeling, but she's still pregnant, so.
It's amazing. It totally is amazing. So I'm assuming you know Mandarin by living in China.
Yeah, pretty well. I mean, not at like local level or anything, but 我可以说一点点.
See, I did the entire first set of Rosetta Stone in Mandarin, and I think I can pronounce apple wrong out of the whole thing.
You want to give it a try?
Is it like pinghua?
Yeah, 苹果.
Yeah, so that's all I know. I knew like there's like New Heiza.
Yeah, woman.
Yeah, see, that's about what I learned.
I know ni hao.
Actually, I did part of the Rosetta Stone. It's like they just show you a picture, and then they're like, the cat is on the tank or whatever. Then the cat is under the tank. Then the cat is beside the tank.
Yeah,
it's pretty funny stuff.
So that didn't really sit in well with me.
Yeah, well, apparently it did not work out too well for you over there.
So did you just learn by immersion?
Well, I went to school and immersion, and then I went to school and immersion, and I still suck. So, it's a long process.
So we kind of got you on, kind of got hooked up through Reddit a little bit. Like you made a post about wanting to talk about like what they're calling the immigration crisis in Europe, right?
Right. Yeah, that's at least one of the issues I want to touch on right now, today.
Okay, so being a dumb American, can you kind of explain what they mean by the European immigration crisis?
Well, sure. Actually, I prepared some figures on that. So right now there's a huge refugee crisis basically across Europe because of all the wars and the chaos that's happening just to the south of them in Syria and in Libya and so forth. And apparently this year, 800,000 people are expected to apply for asylum in Germany. And just last month alone, in July alone, 107,000 migrants crossed into the EU. So it's really like these are insane numbers of people fleeing their regions right now. And obviously it's leading to some backlash and a lot of conflict across Europe.
It's pretty much like the largest mass migration since World War II. But I've heard figures like that it might supersede that. Is that right?
I don't know about comparing to World War II, but the Bosnian crisis was actually way less than way less refugees and migrants than we're getting now. So this is basically unprecedented.
So what is like the is happening to like these host nations? Like basically like what I'm reading is kind of like the same thing that happens here in the United States with our neighbors to the south, where it gets very xenophobic and very racist rhetoric pretty damn quickly when they start talking about these issues.
Yeah, I think there's an insane amount of racist rhetoric going around right now, and it's definitely a big problem. Just even over the last few years before this crisis, the far-right parties in Europe have been gaining some traction, and especially right now, it's all coming to a boiling point.
The only far right party I'm super aware of is Golden Dawn. What other far right parties are you referring to?
Well, right now, for example, in Sweden, which I love Sweden, they're like the most welcoming country in Europe, but they're getting a lot of backlash for that. And apparently, like a huge percentage of Swedes right now are starting to kind of regret their policies and so on. Basically, like. You look at the UK, there's right-wing parties. You look at France, you got the National Front. It's just there's a huge kind of right-wing populist backlash against migration in Europe.
What is like the baseline for that backlash? Is it just like purely economics, like they're going to take our jobs kind of thing, or something different?
Well, I think part of it is economic, because right now Europe is having a lot of economic troubles as well, right? So it's pretty easy to turn around and say, why are we helping out these people and so on. But then I also think that it's just racist, or, you know, kind of rooted in this, I don't know if it's racist or not, but kind of fear of the other, and like, you know, people just don't understand each other, and that's what's leading to these problems.
I just keep reading like crazy stories of, you know, like where they'll stop helping refugees coming through in boats, and it's just like, none of it makes sense to me. Like, it's just like, it seems like a loss of complete basic humanity, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, across Europe and even in Australia, and, you know, even dating back to World War II, we've just been rejecting refugee boats, and even there's been proposals to like shoot at the boats, you know, and sink them, and anything to stop these migrants from getting to the borders. Like Australia right now with the Noro Islands, any boat that gets there, they just ship them off to a concentration camp on this island, and yeah, it's the same in Europe. They've discontinued all their rescue programs. I know Italy was discontinuing their migrant rescue program, and the UK was discontinuing their migrant rescue program. It's just like, these people are in boats, like their only other option is to drown, you know, and then you cancel the program. I don't understand it.
And it's not raising the statistic, or the statistics are already raising by denying these boats. You're not increasing anything.
Yeah, they're not stopping anything by saying we're not going to help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I think there's such a flood of people right now that you know, letting a few people drown in the ocean is not really going to make a dent. It just makes you look like complete assholes.
One of the things that kind of blows my mind about this whole thing, so you hear about like Syrian refugees, and the only people that are fighting in Syria that are doing anything credible, as far as I know of, is the area in Rojava, where they're a completely sovereign area, but they're stuck fighting against Turkey at the same time, and because of their previous affiliation with like the PKK, no one will help them at all. It just seems like a bag of shit.
Yeah, actually, I know you guys are kind of into the anarchist movement, and I see a lot of anarchists supporting the PKK, right, the Kurdish people. Mm-hmm. Do you follow any of the news on that at all? Because I'm not very enlightened on.
So I know just a tinge about the PKK.
No, they don't really like calling it an anarchist movement.
I know Rojava in general, they don't like calling it an anarchist movement. They are stateless. They kind of have a lot, like they fell away from the PKK probably quite a while ago. But some of the things like I do know that they did, like the first thing they did was institute like a women's council to oversee everything. They got rid of all banks overnight. They came through and said, well, if we train everyone on being a member of the police force, then we don't need a police force at all, and disbanded a police force. So they're doing very, very radical things, and it's working. And more so than that, they're being able to come together as a community and fight against the Syrian government at the same time and keep them off, but also having to keep off the Turkish government, because they, also pose a threat to Turkey as well.
Right, and then the Turkish government can turn around and call them terrorists, and go in there and bomb away. Yeah,
exactly. I don't know if you're familiar with David Graeber, but he did a really good. He actually went to Rojava and then did a really good some speaking tours. I know he went to like Cambridge and then a couple other places. It was pretty amazing stuff coming out of there.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to read. I run a World Anarchism Reddit, and they're always talking about the Kurds, but I haven't really done too much research on them.
Yeah, it's from what I hear, it's kind of hard because they don't like the term anarchist, because they say they're more culturally anarchist. Like that's just what their culture is based on, and they're just trying to get back to more of their cultural roots. But then again, I could be talking out of my ass because I really don't know that much. So, it's one of those things that,
Well, Syria is just one of the migrant countries right now, and then Libya and maybe even Iraq. It's going crazy right now.
It's like 70% of the migrants are from like those places.
Yeah, like war-torn regions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's the kind of hypocritical thing about Europe is, like France and in Germany, they will they will destabilize these governments in Libya and in Syria, and they contribute to the destabilization and the chaos, but then they don't want to do any of the cleanup or deal with any of the people who are suffering.
It's because they're not white.
Well, I say that all the time.
I mean, like we say that being glib, but it's just fucking true, unfortunately.
Well, a great example of that is like Turkey. They've been trying to join the European Union for 40 years, and lots of countries with shittier economies than Turkey have managed to get into the EU, and less strong militaries and whatever. But Turkey is just always, I know they have some human rights issues and whatever, but I think just because they're a brown Muslim country, they never get entrance.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I feel weird, like saying, like, well, why can't they be in the EU? Because I'd be one of the top people fighting against the EU to begin with, coming from an anarchist standpoint. So it's not. It brings up some hypocrisies, right?
Well, it's just kind of indicative of Europe's mindset on the whole thing.
So you were saying that you run some anarchist stuff on Reddit, right?
Yeah.
So do you identify yourself as an anarchist?
Well, I try not to let myself get pigeonholed. Like I'm a libertarian, socialist, anarchist. I try to be across the whole spectrum, and I want to be inclusive. I find like when you start dividing yourself like that, it gets really. I was listening to your podcast yesterday or today about the vegans and all their divisions, and like this is not true veganism and that is not true veganism, and I've definitely had this experience where. I try to advocate international socialism, and then they're like, oh, you're not an international socialist or whatever. And I don't know. It's just, I don't want to be labeled into like, but I like anarchy because it's about freedom, right? And individual freedom and personal liberty. And so that side of it really resonates with me.
I totally get the labeling aspect of it. But I've kind of just succumbed to it because it's an easy way of saying, this is my general point of view. If you understand this, we're going to get along just fine without getting into the nuances of it.
Yeah, there's so many hyphenated anarcho
whatever. Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah, well, like I participate in the anarcho-capitalist community, and like there's always some guy saying you're not a true anarcho-capitalist, or there's always some guy saying you're not a true socialist, and it kind of drives me insane.
So
syndicalists pretty much hate.
Yeah, so this is another like division that you have. Like if you're in like the ANCAP community, you're going to find out a lot of the other anarchist communities can be like, well, you're not a real fucking anarchist, which I'm sure you've experienced.
Well, I'm not saying I'm an ANCAP. I'm just, I try to participate in all the political communities and preach my message of Post Nationalism.
So do you find that the Reddit community is a positive community?
Well, I think it's pretty negative overall and like kind of hateful and spiteful, but it's also the biggest American web forum, so you kind of have to take the good with the bad.
I have a love-hate relationship with Reddit.
I do.
I don't post on Reddit. I'm not an active member on Reddit. I am an active lurker 4 or 5 times a day, right? But I won't go to like any of the anarchist subreddits. I don't go to any of the animal rights subreddits. I just can't get into it like that.
Yeah, well, and it's all a bit like masturbatory, it's just theory talk, and nothing ever happens. So
I like the cat pictures.
I mainly stick to certain subreddits and then don't deviate from that very much, or else I get depressed.
Well, there's like the main anarchism Reddit on there.
Yeah.
And they like ban a lot of people, and like they're very censor happy, and it kind of turned me off anarchism a little bit to see all the censorship and the I don't know, it just didn't seem anarchist to me at all.
It's a common criticism that they get. They'll actually ban people for bringing it up. So.
Well, it's really interesting because they really do have a very, I almost want to say totalitarian grip over there. Like, and I'm not saying like things shouldn't be moderated. Like you shouldn't tolerate like blatant racism and blatant hate, right? Like that's not the forum for it. But they way overstep bounds.
Well, there is a specific other Reddit where the anarchists discuss who they're going to ban, called meta-anarchism.
Yeah.
And then days and days and days of discussing who they're going to ban from this anarchism subreddit, and the whole thing just blows my mind. So I don't know.
I went there once, and that's when I'm like, I'm never going to go to the anarchism subreddit again.
Well, it's kind of like taken over by the social justice warrior movement. So it's a mix of anarchism and SJW stuff.
I'm not familiar with the term SJW.
I'm not using it as a slur, but social justice warrior. It's a slur, I guess. But
so is that somebody that's like an armchair social justice activist or something, or?
Well, right now Reddit is. I don't know if you really follow all the drama, but there's been a lot of subreddits banned and stuff for being racist and whatever. And then
like the fat people hate stuff, right? Kind of started it
in Coontown and
and
any Reddit that is deemed objectionable can now be removed, which is kind of scary to me. But I understand people's complaints with with some of these Reddits too.
It's that fine border of like, I find this deplorable, but is it my place to really stomp over you?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I think the problem with the main anarchism is. It's like just let us say our piece in there. It's supposed to be anarchism. I don't know.
I remember one time, like when we first started the show, somebody posted one of our episodes over there, and there was a big long discussion about whether or not we were actually real anarchists. I'm like, how can they even have that discussion? Like, based on an episode, it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
What did you guys say? Something kind of objectionable or
no?
What?
Nuh-uh. I didn't even chime into it. I thought it was funny.
I don't think we even really talked about anarchism, did we?
No, we briefly talked about some of Graeber's theories in Debt.
Okay.
And they're like, they have a complete misunderstanding or something. They're not real anarchists. It was I found it humorous. Well, I don't know if you follow much of the Spanish Revolution, but there was a really interesting book called Ready for Revolution that it was all like the internal documents of the anarchist revolution there. And it was the exact same thing. It was meeting after meeting of one group saying they're not anarchists because of this, and another group saying, well, they're not real anarchists because of this. And these are like during the actual revolution. Like, this is like while they're fighting and holding parts of Spain. And, it was very, very interesting. It's almost like, that sounds like Reddit.
Yeah, well, also there's that Monty Python skit with like the United People of Judea and then the Judean People's Front, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's the same as the Monty Python skit where they all just split up into little basically the same subgroups.
It basically goes into the same like South Park skit of the two atheist groups.
Yeah, probably.
So you said besides immigration, there was a couple other things you really wanted to talk about. What other things did you have that you really wanted to go into?
Well, I'm the founder of Post Nationalism or Post Nationalist. Yeah, on Reddit, Post Nationalism, and I was hoping to talk about that today and just kind of moving towards globalism and moving past nationalism and worrying about what country we were born in and that kind of thing.
So when you say that, you're basically talking about like an elimination of nation-state borders, right?
Yeah, well, I get accused of being a globalist or whatever, but I'm not really sure how post-nationalism would look. But I just know that I don't like nationalism, and nationalism is dangerous, and there's a lot of problems with nationalism, and I hope more people can see that.
So are you talking about like organizing on a global level, or eliminating nation-state borders, but organizing more on a local level?
Right. Well, actually, we started out as kind of an open borders thing, and it was really a lot more focused on open borders. But I realized that people their brains kind of turn off when you say open borders. They're just like, no, that's not going to happen. Fuck that. No open borders. And I kind of realized it was a bit deeper than just whether or not people had freedom of movement. It was also kind of accepting other humans regardless of where they were born, and kind of realizing that we're all just people, and maybe we have different cultures or different incomes, but the country we were born in should not be defining us so much.
It's really true. Borders have always just baffled me, like, and how people can be scared to tear them down also is strange to me. They're just land regions and we happen to live in them.
Well, like a really easy example is the Canadian to U.S. border, which is just absolutely insane right now. When I was a kid, it was you could go across with your birth certificate or maybe not even your birth certificate, but now it's like walled to the brim and you're getting searched every time, and it's almost moving in the wrong direction.
If you have any sort of record, then you're usually held in some limbo area where they violate all your rights that you don't have because you're in a limbo area.
It always struck me that it's such a simple issue in so many ways. Like when we went to pick up Jordan from prison, he was in prison in El Paso, and we were there with my daughter, and we're in El Paso where you can see across the river into Mexico, and she's looking at the river and she's like, they can't come over here and I can't just come over there. This is stupid. Like, I think she was like 6 at the time. Like if a goddamn 6-year-old, gets it.
Yeah, well, she's wiser than most people.
I mean, it's just the stark contrast of the area, though. It's like,
it's amazing. Yeah,
it's like that's Mexico. This is the United States.
It's a nice picture the other day of people playing volleyball across one of the border fences, which was kind of a little more uplifting.
Yeah, I heard that.
That's an awesome annual event that they do there. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't mind playing.
But before we get off that, like I've been in China for 10 years or so, and I flew back to Canada last year, and I hadn't been in Canada for 9 years because I grew up in the States. And when I arrived at the border, I was a smoker then. I quit now, but I was dying for a cigarette, and like I'm already anti-border, so I started giving the border agent a little bit of flack, and I got pulled off for additional searching. And like spent an extra hour in the border security area, and they took my laptop and they demanded my my password for the laptop, and they took it in the back room and searched it, and they also accused me of being a child molester and stuff. Like, this is returning to my home country that I haven't been in for 9 years, and that was my welcome. So just kind of reinforced all my hatreds.
So that was going into Canada or into the U.S.? I'm sorry. No,
into Canada.
So you're from Canada?
Yeah, I'm Canadian.
What part of Canada were you from?
Well, I moved around my whole life, which is kind of what contributed to my global perspective. But I was born in Ontario, and I grew up in the States, in Texas mostly.
That's a stark difference growing up in Texas.
Yeah, well, I wrote a little blurb here. That was what kind of made me realize that Canadians and Americans are really similar, and like there's I'm sure some Canadians listening might get a little irritated, but it just kind of made me realize that the whole division thing was kind of stupid. And besides how I said hoos and a boot and stuff, like it was we're all the same people.
So when you run this subreddit, do you do any other type of activism to try to promote this post-nationalism?
That's what I'm trying to do now with getting on these podcasts and stuff. But actually, I was kind of hoping to get some advice from you guys, because you are more experienced activists. Like, it's just an idea. It's a concept, so it's a bit hard to... I'm not quite sure how to promote it and how to advocate for it and what kind of actual concrete steps we can take. So I'm a little bit lost there, but I'm hoping to get the word out that nationalism is bad and we should not take it so seriously.
Well, I feel that that's super similar to like anarchism and anti-capitalism in general. Like a lot of people know that it's bad, but aren't really sure what to do with it.
I think it's all about finding the ways in your daily life that you can express like what you want to be differently, and then organize around those ways. Like, so like if you're talking about like food injustice, how do you like literally organizing your life around those type of individual situations? With post-nationalism, though, I mean, especially being in China, I come to a stumbling block, because I mean, basically, not only you're saying, hey, all countries are bad, but you're in a place that, in of itself limits even more than other countries. You know what I mean?
Well, and also I might get a job at the state newspaper as an editor, so that's almost like the complete. I don't know. I hope they don't look too hard into post-nationalism.
I hope this doesn't fuck that up for you.
I sent them the link to my Reddit, but I don't think they checked it out too hard. but like I like run like a government oppression Reddit, and like basically everything I do is anti-government, and then I've got this cool job at a state newspaper maybe, so who knows.
Do you have you ever been fearful of being booted out of China?
Yeah, not really. China's actually a lot more welcoming for people to like come here and do business and whatever than America is. If you want to go to China, it's like a 1-month process. You get your visa, you come over here, you go teach English under the table or whatever you want. It's a lot less restrictive and a lot easier to stay in China and to be in China and so forth. So on that front, I actually think China's doing a better job than a lot of Western countries.
Is that just because they're trying to increase like their economic global reach?
Yeah, well, the city I live in, Guangzhou, which is in the south, has I think like 100,000 African people here who all came from Africa, and they're doing trade and so on. There's a whole chocolate city. This is like the trading hub of China here in Guangzhou, and there's just so many African people and from all over the world who come here. It's actually a really global city. So I think that because China wants to advance in the world and they needed the foreign expert input, they've become kind of welcoming of immigrants. Although not really. There's still huge xenophobic tendencies, and if you read the web forums, you'll see a lot of hatred. But
where's that typically like coming from? Like what kind of racism and xenophobia?
Well, in Guangzhou, I think a lot of the black people have it a lot worse than us white people. That's pretty typical. But I think a big part of it is like sexual, right? Like if you see a foreign guy with a Chinese girl, and then China already has a imbalance between male and female population. So I think a lot of it can spring from that, and just general. China's kind of at an adversarial stance with the rest of the world. So I think that kind of ties into it too. Like if you're Japanese in China, then you're definitely gonna face it more.
Yeah.
Is there like I know in places that have like very I'm trying to think of the terminology, but like where they're pretty restrictive in certain social aspects, like being able to talk out socially, and other things, that the counterculture movements become really tight and close knit. Do you feel that the same way there?
Well, I try to stay out of any local politics stuff for the fear of deportation we were talking about. I don't want to get I don't want to draw any attention to myself, so I kind of stick to global or to Reddit or to the foreign side. But I would really like to kind of introduce post-nationalism to Chinese people and stuff. I'm just a little worried about the backlash if I get a bunch of popular videos about how anti-nationalism.
Yeah, because I mean, like basically you're coming out and not just saying, hey, China's bad. You're basically saying, hey, fuck everyone.
Yeah, and fuck the government, which is nationalist as fuck, right? And
yeah. Everything you do is wrong, and I'm against all of it.
Yeah, well, I won't write I won't sneak any of that into my paper.
Well, like speaking of like intersectionality and stuff like that, what's like sexism like there? You hear that China always gets like a bad rap for that.
Well, I think it's really sexist in like the relationships and like traditional relationships, and pushing, and a lot like Korea or Japan, where the woman is expected to be kind of docile and at home, and the man is out there buying the apartment and the car to land the lady. In China, because it has the male to female imbalance, it goes a bit farther than some other countries, I think. But as for in the workplace, I haven't really experienced as a woman, so I can't say, but I think China's doing a lot better than some other Asian nations, just because in China it's the money that matters and it's the talent that matters, and everybody's an entrepreneur these days, so there's a lot of opportunities for women.
So what is your origin? Like, what brought you to be more of this radical person and trying to get more into activism?
Right. Well, I said I grew up all over, and I moved across the U.S., and I've been in China, and I was living in Taiwan, and uh, I participate in a lot. I hate to bring up Reddit, a lot of Reddit discussions, and I just saw an overlying theme of nationalism and anti-immigration, and just people scared of the other, and not welcoming the other, and not really understanding outside of their own nation or outside of their own local community. And that's kind of what drove me to start Post Nationalism, is to make a safe place for people to discuss immigration and these issues without having to deal with the hordes of culture warriors.
So have you studied like when you talk about like anarchism, have you studied like any of the classic anarchist literature or any of the classic like socialist literature or even like communist literature?
I haven't done too much reading on it, but I'm like number 150 among all Redditors for submitting, so I'm constantly like submitting stuff on socialism and anarchism, so I kind of get a general overview, but I haven't done a lot of reading behind the scenes. I was listening to you guys talk about the books you've read and all this stuff, and I'm like, shit, yeah, I'm lost there.
I feel so lost when I talk to so many people. Honestly, some of the I know like Jordan, he's big on not reading the classics. So
I just don't feel that they're relevant. Like you can learn from history, but I just feel like a modern interpretation would be much more appreciated.
Well, what do you guys think is like the present day of anarchism? Because it just seems like you got a lot of people calling themselves anarchists, but I just don't see it manifesting anywhere, and there's no Somali or whatever is the joke, but I don't understand how anarchism applies to the present day.
That's a very difficult question to answer. So I kind of view the modern take of anarchism right now for myself is that really, I guess it goes into my own personal progression with anarchism, right? Because it goes into my personal point of view with it and how I choose to surround myself. But I think it's a lot bigger and stronger now than it ever has been, and more united. Like when you take everything that happened, like Scott Krow did after Hurricane Katrina, where the only ones really organizing and helping the community were anarchists. They were the first on the scenes. They were going where the government wouldn't go. They were going in when the government wouldn't allow them in. Same thing happened after Sandy.
Yeah, Hurricane Sandy.
Where anarchists are actually feeding government workers because they ran out of stuff. These are very great ways of what I would like to view as anarchism in progress, in work, right? But I think the biggest failing of modern day anarchism is that same thing, where when shit hits the fan, all the average person cares about is their security, right? They want lodging and they want food, and they want to know they're going to be safe. That's all they really care about. And I think as anarchists, we fell tremendously on providing the alternatives for those. So I really see the modern day anarchism is trying to build up our own institutions to overtake state institutions, basically. And you see it slowly starting to happening, especially like with the work like Food Empowerment Project is doing, the other work like that Scott Krow is doing, like the Institute for Anarchist Studies.
I actually listened to that one, the Scott Krow interview you did with the guy after, was it Katrina? And yeah, I actually listened to that. It was a pretty interesting episode that you guys did.
That was what, like 2 years ago? That was an long time ago. No, Scott Krow did like a lot of amazing work, and he still does a lot of amazing work with trying to push what modern day anarchism really is, right? What was that?
With your interview with him, it seemed like kind of a little bit stuck in the past, right? It was like, well, we did all this great stuff after Katrina, but then the movement, it kind of seems it's a bit lost at that point. I don't know. I don't want this to be a critique of anarchism or anything.
Oh, I'm fine critiquing anarchism. Mm-hmm. I critique it all the time in my life.
Do all the skeptic talk, so I'm sure you're big on self-critique as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's vital. So, but I don't know if I kind of answered your question with anarchism. Like, to me, it's one of those things that, like, I wish it was in a different place than it is now. I don't think the community is as strong as it should be. I do believe there is too many divisions. I do believe that has too strong of a white male voice.
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
And I'm sitting here and I'm just contributing to that, you know. So it's kind of like one of those catch-22s.
Yeah, well, me too.
I mean, do you have like any? It's a very like vague question that's really hard to answer. Do you have like a more specific question, maybe?
Now, let's just go on that white male voice thing. Is because I'm an advocate for post-nationalism and open borders and letting people work where they want to work and companies hire who they want to hire. I often get accused of being like an Indian or a Chinese or something just because, I don't know, it's like a race traitor or something to hire a brown person, you know. So I'm always getting accused of being a foreigner. It's pretty funny.
I don't know if I get the reference. So you're saying like the Chinese people are accusing you?
No, like Reddit people.
Well, Reddit people are going to do anything, right?
Right. But let me give you guys some quotes that I had here about post-nationalism, if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
Okay, well, Neil deGrasse Tyson, which is Reddit icon, he said recently, I had to wait in line to renew a passport allowing to visit members of my own species across artificially conceived borders, and that's meaningful.
I love that one. He got a lot of flack for that, actually.
Mm-hmm. Really? I didn't know that he got backlash. But it was pretty popular. It was very viral. And then the world is not divided between East and West. You're American, I'm Iranian. We don't know each other, but we talk and understand each other perfectly. Our differences are our governments. And I think these are all really powerful. It's a lot of the time that people don't understand is that they're quite similar to everyone in other countries. It's just that they've been divided by their government, and the government has an incentive to keep them divided.
I really like that one. That's one of the things that I've never really understood, why people don't connect the dots between that we are all just people, but so much so that like when they say things like the borders inherently make it an us versus them. Like these are my jobs, this is my food, this is my resources.
Yeah, I kind of, that's one of my popular rants. Is I like to rant about Western socialism, and I think Western socialism, you could often just call it National Socialism, because it's all about protecting the people in your nation. It's not about helping the working class. It's about helping your national working class. So what's it? It's National Socialism, and a really good example of that is like Norway, which is, I think, one of the richest countries on earth. Right now they have $1 trillion oil fund, like $1 trillion in an oil fund with like 5 million people. So they could all buy BMWs or whatever. And they don't let in too many migrants. They don't let in too many immigrants. They don't share. They have a huge land mass. But then if they're constantly hailed as like a socialist country, and like a great example of socialism, and if only our country was like Norway or Sweden or Finland or whatever, although Sweden's doing better, but we would be doing well. But I kind of view them all as National Socialists, where their basic philosophy is, hey, fuck you guys, we got $1 trillion oil fund, we're not letting you in here, we've got $1 trillion.
I think that you can use that same critique against syndicalism as well. At least I've heard that same critique against syndicalism as well, where syndicalism really only focuses on individual workers and not the entire society at large.
Right, and I read a book from a Mexican labor organizer. I forgot his name, but he basically says that we end up getting divided by race, and that helps out the companies and the governments and keeps our wages down, and people buy into this kind of division. Whereas what we need to do as laborers is to kind of an international form of socialism. And you're a poor laborer, I'm a poor laborer, you're a poor middle class, I'm poor middle class. We got to work together to move up, instead of like Trump is doing, saying, let's build a wall and let's kick everyone out and fuck Mexico and war with China and all this stuff, and I think the working class is working class of the world unites or whatever communist theory.
So you were saying that you're one of the top Reddit posters, right?
Right.
So what drives you to be a part of that community so much? I mean, like, not just be a part of that community. I would say that you, by posting so much, that's being a pillar of that community.
Yeah, I'm definitely kind of semi-famous there, and I get people like posting about me like randomly and like summoning me everywhere. But because I founded this, I've just been a participant on Reddit for so long that founding Post Nationalism on Reddit was kind of the natural thing to do. And then I was trying to think how to get the word out about it. So I just decided I would get my name everywhere, and my username is Post Nationalism. So anytime anyone clicks on my link, they're upvoting Post Nationalism, and I often find that in the comments section and in the discussions, people will discuss the ideas of nationalism, even if they're not even if they're not like following me on Twitter or whatever, it's driving the discussion. And I'm hoping that, it's hard to quantify. That's the only thing that bothers me, is I don't know what kind of an impact I'm really making, but just trying to get the word of post-nationalism out there. And I've been doing that quite successfully. So I decided I would try to get on some podcasts and try to branch out a little bit and maybe even make a difference in the real world.
I just can imagine like a burnout feeling from Reddit, because it's so finicky and back and forth, and sometimes inviting, but then it will bite your ass, the next minute.
Yeah, well, I've been banned and shadow banned and kicked off, and I'm banned from like politics and world news, and so I definitely have a love-hate relationship with Reddit too, and yeah. And actually, I'm banned from the like socialist Reddit and the progressive Reddit, and it kind of drives me against like all these leftist political ideals, because I feel like they're kind of fascist in a way. I don't know. They're really quick to censor opposing point of views. I don't know.
So when you make these posts and you see these discussions, is it generally positive discussions, or is it more neutral, negative? Like, what kind of discussions do you see coming out of these posts?
I think that the general trend on Reddit is quite anti-immigrant and anti-migrant and anti-foreigner, and that's part of what motivates me.
I hear that a lot. I hear that Reddit is very, it's very sexist, it's very racist, but I see it when I go on like the front page and other things. But I guess I really just stick to my subreddits. I don't venture out. I venture out when I'm interested in something, but yeah.
Well, where do you usually go?
But honestly, like I stick around like the design subreddits and
porn. Is that what you were gonna say?
yeah, not safe for work. No.
What's funny, like my top subreddit is table tennis.
Really?
Yeah. So like I don't get into the political side of it at all, even though the rest of my life is completely political.
Yeah, well, that's because you get the burnout from the rest of your life, so Reddit is relaxing to you. Or
I think
that is very true.
I think my top Reddit is ex-Mormon.
Yeah, I would say yours is probably ex-Mormon,
which is
I heard you guys say you were ex Latter-day Saints on the last. I was just listening.
Oh, look!
And I know you're in Utah too. So
you use the correct terminology and everything. My hat's off to you.
Well, I was trying to think if it was like, I was like, what does that mean again? LDS, but I got it.
Yeah. We were both raised in very, very religious families.
Yeah, well, that might be what drove you to being the opposite, right?
Well, I really though, because it's the same idea of nationalism and religion. It just, you're born in America, you're more likely to be a Christian. If you're born in a Muslim country, you're more likely to be Muslim.
Yeah, I was born into a state that was at the time like 70% Mormon. So yeah, but we're changing that slowly.
Really? It's going down?
Oh yeah, like it's dropping like amazing.
60-40?
Right now it's like right below 60% for the entire state, but the actual Salt Lake metropolitan area where most of the people live, like Salt Lake City is about 40% LDS, 60% non-LDS, and then the county is about 50-50. So the metropolitan area has dropped tremendously.
Is that because of people moving in or what?
I think so. Yeah, I think
it's a combination. Mostly people moving in, but also losing a lot of members. They're doing lots of they call radical things to try to keep it, like they lowered the age of their missionaries that they send out to 18. They just this week started to include women on a couple important councils.
Wow, that's progress.
I know.
2 to 3 women.
Yeah, 2 to 3 women.
Because one of those offices can be a man or a woman.
Yeah.
Well, when I just graduated college and I moved to Taiwan, I had there's a lot of Mormons in Taiwan, actually, and I bumped into them a few times. And I was eating at McDonald's, and they just came up to me and started trying to convert me while I'm eating my burger. I'm like, hi, guys.
See, like, I would love that to happen to me, but that has never, ever happened to me. Because I view them as, like, poor kids at this point. Like, they're just almost brainwashed kids, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, really, they're 18, 19-year-olds that have lived in like very secluded lives, been taught one-dimensional aspects of how everything is going to be. Plus, they believe the world's going to end probably in their lifetime.
Yeah, well, that would give you some motivation at least.
Yeah. I
just feel bad for them. I just don't even know what else to do with them, though. But I would love to run into them at someplace else, because I could tear that doctrine apart.
Yeah, you would ruin some young kids' lives, I'm sure.
No, I would free them.
Blow their mind.
Yeah, totally blow. But there's actually a lot of missionaries, since they have to be with a member of their same sex like 24/7. A lot of them find out that that's the way they swing.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, no, it's very common.
Well, it's like all boys or all girls schools, right? There's no other outlet.
Yeah, exactly.
But back to that all, I think like that's a lot of the problem that people have, is that if they realize that, you know, the areas that they're born into is irrelevant, like as far as like nationalism goes and religion goes, they want to hold on to that because they're religious, so they don't want to acknowledge that the area that they're born into isn't relevant. Does that make sense?
Well, and I mean, you're raised from birth to kind of like love your country and, you know, salute your flag in high school. And China's way worse, or at least, you know, China's very nationalist as well, but in the States is also very nationalist. And I mean, I guess tribalism has kind of been with humans for forever, and I don't really know what would kind of replace the nation if we were like a global system. Like, people would probably still divide along ethnic lines or religious lines. So, you know, it's not going to be a completely rosy future, but I would just like us to stop thinking that we can bomb Iran or like start wars with Russia or all this stuff just because, you know, America number one.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of tribalism, because it's something that I meant to bring up when you were talking about before. And like, what's interesting to me about tribalism is that I don't think it was ever intentionally divided upon by racial lines. I think it was originally people grouped together because that's who their original group was, right? And so, I mean, really, the American slave trade is what really brought the construct of racism, where before it really was basically where you were from. It was more nationalistic than it was. Like, it was, you know, people were anti-Irish, but even though Irish were white, or they were anti-whatever, you know, other tribe you were from, not because of the color of your skin, because simply it's a different tribe.
Yeah, actually, and I think some melting pot nations kind of try to unite their nation, but like under nationalism, and kind of try to get all the different, like China, they have a lot of different ethnic subgroups, and then they try to unite them all as one and under the China banner and China power, and I don't know, it doesn't have to be about race.
Yeah, so I mean, I think like the real struggle is allowing people to maintain their individual identity, their community identity, without having it to be tied to a nation state, right?
Well, the big thing about nation states is what I was touching on earlier with the National Socialism, is it kind of gives you an excuse to screw over everybody else because you got to maintain your tribe, right, or maintain your nation. And you see that like with the socialists I was talking about, and with Donald Trump, and, you know, everything. It doesn't matter how many people we kill in foreign wars, because they're not people.
I mean, that is one of the first things you do in war, is try to dehumanize the enemy. And unfortunately, I believe that, you know, especially the United States has been at war for so long with so many places that everyone is basically the enemy at this point.
Yeah, I was reading like Venezuela, we've made trouble in all over the Middle East, and then in Asia, and where is the U.S. not meddling around? And
I mean, like you just mentioned Venezuela, but I would venture to say every South American and Central American country. I mean,
something or other.
I mean, we've even Canada. I mean, let's look at history, right?
Yeah, well, even Canada nowadays, a lot of their laws and everything is influenced by the U.S. pressure. America is an empire, right? They're a global empire. America is the Soviet Union, just with capitalism instead of communism. They're worshiping capitalism instead of worshiping communism, but I'm not seeing a lot of differences.
Yeah, it's basically, they're worshiping the dollar instead of the state.
Well, like look at Vietnam and Korea and all the Cold War stuff. Like, okay, Russia invaded them. We have to go invade them as well, to stop this domino theory. Like, what is the difference between America invading the country and the Soviet Union invading the country? I really don't understand.
Well, when you look at like the geopolitical sphere of influences, right? Like America has always been one that is continually trying to push their sphere of influence. And you can even see that right now with going into, increasing NATO countries and everything else and encroaching even more on Russia. But they want that sphere of influence as large as possible. I really think they won't be satisfied until it's the entire globe.
Well, and that's actually a big issue these days is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, and the TTIP, and those big trade agreements, which as like a post-nationalist, I kind of agree with because they're bringing the world together. But then you also see how they're kind of dividing the world into power blocks, and then I'm not really sure what. I guess I support it, but then at the same time, I don't want it to turn into 1984, where we've got the one big power block, another big power block, and it's instead of nations, it's just two warring blocks,
See, I kind of view it like I view like NAFTA, right? So basically all NAFTA did was make it easier for a center of influence or a center of power, i.e. the United States, take advantage of other countries with less tax burden that don't have that same burden. So it just makes it easier to exercise your influence of power. So it doesn't actually make the people that are on the losing end of the power battle, doesn't give them any more power, if that makes sense. I think it does the exact opposite.
Well, I'm just going to, when I was younger and I was like a super liberal and I was like, 20 or whatever, I was reading all this stuff like Walmart is the devil and they're bringing all our jobs to China and they're outsourcing. And for me, outsourcing is, and hiring foreign people is a good thing. And NAFTA is a good thing because it gave Mexicans opportunities and it gives Chinese opportunities. And I kind of support the big corporations in this way just because they are willing to hire foreign people, and they're doing it for purely selfish reasons, of course, but they're giving these foreign people jobs and opportunities and stuff that just did not exist there. And I don't really like the argument that we should just keep all the Walmart employees at home, or we should never outsource, because that's just economic protectionism, and I don't think it's good policy.
No, I agree with the idea of like it's not about like the jobs aspect for me. To me, it's about the enabling of the power, right? And so like I do look at those things where you say like, well, yes, they brought jobs to places that didn't have jobs, and you're like, well, yes, that it might be technically true, but they also brought worse living conditions at the same time because of the different power struggles that are exhibited. Does that kind of make sense?
Well, right. And then if you look at like South America or whatever, America is not bringing any jobs. All they're bringing is like banana companies to take over the countries, right?
Exactly. So to me, it's not like the idea, like I'm all for everyone working. I don't have any issue with buying goods made from anywhere in the world as long as those are good working conditions, right? And I view things like NAFTA and the TPP as making working conditions even worse because it's giving people with the current power even more power. So it lopsides that power dynamic.
Sometimes I find that can be like a bit of a logical trap, because you say, we're not going to hire these people because their working conditions are so bad, so we're just going to hire local people. Well, then what do you expect? The people you're depriving the opportunity, how are they supposed to improve themselves if you refuse to hire them because they're so desperate? it's like kind
you're
of
completely right, and this is why it goes back to my critique, which we haven't really brought up, is why I'm not a capitalist. This is the failings of capitalism right here, as far as I'm concerned.
Right? Yeah. I'm sure you guys are a bit anti-capitalist.
No, I mean, a bit's I'm 100% anti-capitalist, so a bit is putting it as an understatement.
Right.
So,
yeah, I view it on the same way as nations or Post Nationalism, I would say.
Yeah. To me, they're
one and the same.
They're one and the same. Like eliminating borders needs to go hand in hand with eliminating capitalism, which doesn't mean eliminating work. I think that doesn't mean eliminating economies, right? I think a lot of people get too confused with those statements.
Well, like if you look at the figures, or if you look at like a map, all the heavy borders in the world are between the rich countries and the poor countries, between Europe and everywhere else, between America and Mexico. Mm-hmm. All the really heavy borders are between the rich countries and the poor countries. And just for some stats, 73% of the world's wealth is locked in with 14% of the world's population in Europe and America and so on. And 86% of the world's population, that means they only have 27% of the world's wealth. And if you are creating artificial barriers between them, be it freedom of movement or not letting corporations hire or whatever, then you're contributing to the problem.
And I also believe you have to look at the income differences inside the borders, like the wealth differences inside the borders, the income gaps and the wealth gaps, inside the United States and even inside European countries, where it is just as staggering to see those type of numbers as well. And again, that's why, I wholeheartedly believe in dismantling borders in every sense, and I'll fight for that every day of my life. But at the same time, that you have to dismantle capitalism at the same time in order to ensure that people are treated fairly and respectfully and given dignity of life.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you there.
So did you just say you're anti-capitalist too?
Well, I'm not gonna. I don't want to pigeonhole myself. I'll get these ANCAPs coming at me now.
Fuck them. I will take on capitalism with anyone personally. I do not see the good of it, and I don't see the good in exporting it. That's like, to me, it's almost like saying, well, it's okay to bring slaves over because they have more food over here. It's almost the same type of ideology to me.
Well, capitalism is basically a religion, right? I don't know. It's a religion.
Oh no,
yeah,
it is. I wholeheartedly agree with that. If you go to some of the earliest well-known economists, even like Kane and even like going into Smith and stuff like that, it's totally dogma.
Right.
I'm just happy we got.
I don't mind. I don't mind if the guy's an ANCAP as long as he's also post-nationalist. As long as he kind of views all people as equal. I don't mind if he's an ANCAP or a libertarian or a communist or a socialist or whatever the hell. As long as he's thinking, people are people, and I will hire this guy. I don't care what country his mother, spit him out in. I will. He's a person to me, and we're all together in it. So. I guess I consider myself anarchist with you guys just because I'm totally into the personal liberty and the freedom and that kind of aspect as well. But
on a personal level, I 100% agree. But I always like to warn anarchists: just be wary of communists. They will fucking kill you when it comes down to it.
They have a track record.
There's a track record of this. This is like on historical data, right?
Well, that's like the thing is. Socialists and leftists and rightists, they're all just about the big government setting rules on you and deciding what you're going to do, and it's all top-down leadership and so there's a lot of similarities.
Yes, yeah. I have a hard time when I talk to especially like communists or like even like some socialists where like they don't understand that like even if they get their governmental dream, I'm still going to be fighting them because they still have those hierarchical structures and they're still going to be, subjugating, and I'm not going to allow that. So we're just strange bedfellows at the moment, but I'm technically your enemy. I don't know if that's a good thing to acknowledge or not.
But in the meantime, we can both work towards ending police brutality and ending borders.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah. Just finding common ground with people, I think, is important.
Just to connect, I think, is important, not just on issues. I think it's important for people just to connect in general.
Like originally on Reddit, I was half libertarian and half socialist. Like it didn't matter to me. I had half my stuff to libertarian and half to socialism, and it was just like, they have so much overlap, but they still view themselves as such enemies. I don't know.
I really think that that's like a thing that like Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, whatever it's that they don't understand about anarchists is that like they don't understand why we don't want to work with them as much, and it's because of that history of knowing that we may have similar goals currently, but our end goal is not the same.
Do you guys have much like experience dealing with like communist organizations near you? It sounds like you've had some run-ins or
yes,
or because besides I live in China, so we got the Communist Party here, but they're not really communists, So I don't. I'd like to hear what you guys.
What blows my mind is hardcore Stalinists and hardcore Maoists.
Mm-hmm.
Like it totally blows my mind. Like I don't get it.
Maoism's a real big thing here lately.
Yeah, it is.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, it's a big thing here too, in that there's pictures of Mao everywhere, but it's definitely not. It's just definitely not popular.
You're in China though. That makes sense.
I was in a restaurant yesterday, like eating my spicy food, and there's just a picture of Mao on the wall. But nobody worships Mao. I don't know. I guess they do, but that's interesting that you're running into Maoists in America. Like, how does that work?
It doesn't. That's I mean, I just don't get it. They get really mad when you call them out on it too, though.
I think it's like they go by like MLM now, like Marxist, Leninist, Maoist. It's all one slur of ists. Whoever they can add to it, Stalinist if you want. And so I think that they're relating all those social structures together.
I just don't get how anyone can look at like Mao's actual track record and be like, oh, look, the Cultural Revolution, it was a good thing.
Well, Mao is kind of like Winston Churchill, right? Like Winston Churchill was a complete fucking asshole and like racist and all this other stuff. But when World War II was on, you want like a crazy guy like that who is good at work. And Mao was also in the same position in China, so he did some good stuff and then some bad stuff.
I mean, like, religion is poison. I like that quote, but that's about it.
But you might appreciate this or not, I don't know. But I actually have a shoulder bag that I keep in the trunk of my car filled with water bottles, and it's a Mao shoulder bag that it has a picture of Mao on it, and then in Mandarin it says "of the people."
Nice.
Yeah, just because. One day Mao will save the day.
You guys are actually pretty smart to like say Mandarin, because most people would be like, what are you speaking there? Is it Cantonese or this or that? But you guys just went right to the Mandarin, so I'm impressed.
Well, what else would you speak?
Chinese. Right?
Yeah. Well, like Cantonese is kind of overrepresented in the West because a lot of Hong Kong people and Cantonese people emigrated. So when people think of China, they often think of Cantonese, which is like the Hong Kong language. But you went right to Mandarin. Maybe you were just lucky. I don't know.
No, I've always just like equated it like that.
It's kind of my
Yeah, it's never been like one big thing. I can't believe it. We're already past an hour. Like just kind of flew by for me. How can people?
I thought I would have a hard time, but actually, it's been great talking to you guys.
No, it's been a lot of fun. How can people like follow what you're doing? Maybe get involved and see your work.
Okay, so if you're on Reddit, check us out at reddit.com/r/Post Nationalist, and if you're on Twitter, twitter.com free migration @freemigration, and those are our better social medias. We're on Instagram and others too.
Well, we end every episode saying "fuck, shit, damn." Would you mind saying it for us this week?
Fuck, shit, damn.
And is there a Mandarin equivalent of that?
can only... okay. 사원이 Dan.
Well, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, and to all the listeners out there, just remember that we're a global society, and remember Post Nationalism.
This week you heard...
Morse by Nightmares on Wax.
And right now you're listening to...
Godlike by Jake One.
You know, I would like to shout out our latest iTunes review and everything, but we didn't have one this week.
Again.
So please, if you just have a second and you enjoyed the show, or enjoyed previous ones, maybe this one sucked and, you know, you liked other ones, go rate, review us. It really helps out the show, though. It makes it so it's easier to find, and we get more listeners, and the more listeners we get, the more content we can create, and the more content we can create, the more listeners we can get, and it just gets better and better for everyone.
I don't know how Apple's wizard science algorithms work, but I think the more reviews and rates we get, the higher up we go on their charts.
It's wizardry, no doubt about it,
Definitely.
but it helps.
So please help us. If you aren't our friend yet, you should be our friend. We like friends. We have multiple social media platforms, and we talk on them every day. So be our friend. Like us. Follow us.
And if you don't have social media, write us a letter.
That would be cool too. We'll
Yeah.
send you a sticker.
As soon as we get more printed.
In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. I don't remember. We don't have anything else, so fuck shit down.
Fuck shit down.
Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.